So that was really encouraging as well. So I'm here today to talk to you about taking care of your gut and to provide simple strategies for health. But I'll start by asking, does anyone, if you're comfortable to share, you don't have to, does anyone suffer from any gut health issues or have ever suffered from gut health issues? Yes? You can raise your hand if you feel comfortable. Yeah, any time. That means constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain, bloating. I'm sure we've all had that at one point, right? We've all had it at some point. Could be a childhood, could be adulthood. We've all had some type of gut health issues. But of course, some of us may have had it longer than others, or it might be a bit more chronic. But today we're going to talk about how to take care of the gut. And the reason why we're talking about the gut is because the gut is, I would say, the organ, or set of organs, it comprises two, but it's connected to all areas of the body. And so if we take care of the gut, then generally we're taking care of every other organ in the body, because anything we take into our bodies first pass through the gut before they go anywhere else, right? So if we have a good gut, whatever's getting passed through is going to be good. We're going to have great nutrients, good supply of anything else that we need in the body, essentially. But before I start, I'm just going to say a word of prayer, and then we'll get into it. Okay, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you again for bringing us all here safely. I want to thank you for this time to share. Father, you know what we have all come here today with. You know the answers we are seeking from you. You know the ways in which we are seeking to be enlightened. And you know the knowledge that we can take from today and share with somebody, even if it's not us, who needs it, so that they can experience health, that they can experience no more suffering and no more pain. And so I pray that you help us to be attentive. Speak to us through your Holy Spirit, Lord. Use me as a vessel. And I pray that even those who are listening, that they will have things to contribute that are also from you. Please bless us as we seek to hear from you and not me. This I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So, let's start. Oh, well, maybe not. Don't think. Next slide, please. Point it at. Okay. Well, the next slide is the agenda, just to show what we're going to go through in the next, I hope, 45 minutes. Don't want to take too much time. I do want to leave time for questions and comments as well, and sharing. Okay, I think it's working now. Thank you. So, first I'll share a bit about my personal experience, why I'm here today. And then we'll talk about the gut and the digestive system. And then we'll take a look at simple strategies for gut health. Just like that. Okay, thank you so much. And then we'll look at a gut health restoration protocol. So, and then we'll summarize. I invite you all and encourage you all to get a pen and a paper. There's going to be things that we go through quicker than others, but you may want to take down the points, especially if gut health is something that you want to get better. Okay, so why am I here? So 2 pictures there. Does anyone know what the picture on the right is? Have a guess. I heard it. Tonsillitis. One of the worst things you could have. If you've ever had tonsillitis, it's awful. Absolutely awful. I used to have it every year as a child. And when I had it, I would not be able to eat for days. My mum used to buy me nourishment, super malt, anything to get something down me. But I couldn't even drink that. It was so painful. I would just lay on the floor, literally just hoping for somebody to rip my tonsils out or do whatever they need to do, and for me not to feel the pain. And so that was my life up until about 18. And what changed that for me, I didn't know it was related to gut health issues. But one thing that was a trigger or that my gut didn't like was dairy products. And so once I came off dairy, after learning about God's plan of life, which is what I'm going to share part of today, I came off dairy and I never had tonsillitis again. Since that day, never again, and I'm 32. That's since 18. But I used to have it every year religiously. And then on the left, you see somebody who's constipated. Or, well, you don't see that, but that's what that is. And I suffered with constipation as a child. Again, days without going to the toilet. When I would try and go to the toilet, unimaginable pain. And, they didn't really know what was going on. Of course, they prescribe and recommend laxatives. But it was just so frequent that it wasn't always possible for me to have laxatives. And sometimes I didn't really share it with my family or my parents because I thought it was normal. And then again, learning about God's plan of life, how to take care of the gut, what the gut needs, which is what I'm going to share today, resolved. I go to the toilet every day. I don't want to be too much information, but I'm very regular, and God has resolved that. So praise God for that. But that's only a bit about why I'm here. I think, sorry, I'm just trying to think of how much I want to share on that. What I would start by saying is that God is mighty to save. I think today has been a great reminder of that. And I remember that so I told you the story about how I started nutrition. And as you can see, that was just like one of those decisions you make because my dad's not well, I want to learn about diabetes. And that's how I started studying about nutrition. But to me, I didn't know that that's how God was guiding my life. I thought, I'm just going in to learn about some things so that I can come out and help my dad. When I came out of university, the next year, I went to America to learn about God's plan of life and how he wants us to be healthy, the laws that he has to govern our beings, and if we follow them, we can experience a blessing of health. So that's what I learned when I went away. And then I came back, and it was 2015, and we went to the doctors. This was 1 year after my dad, who had diabetes, remember why I went to uni in the first place. He had diabetes, a heart attack by then. But by 2014, he had gone on to kidney dialysis, all related to the diabetes. So it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And then in 2015, we went to the doctors, and they said to us that my dad had 3 months to live. And you can just imagine that God set up my life to be in a position to start helping him. And I didn't know. And so in 2015, we started God's plan of life a bit more rigorously because my dad, I think, when he heard that, he finally was a bit more receptive to God's way. And so we started that, and by God's grace, he lived on another. This is always that. Sorry, that's why I hesitate to share. He lived on another 9 years. Sorry. He lived on another 9 years. And I praise God for that. I praise him so much. And then, sadly, 3 months ago, he passed. Thank you so much. Thank you. And so, this is part of the reason that I'm here. I've seen when God's way is applied, even in the face of kidney dialysis, heart disease, diabetes. My dad was blind, registered blind. All of this happened as a result of the diabetes. He was still able to live 9 years. And this was a surprise to everyone. But why? Because God's way works. God's ways works. And if we just listen, my dad wasn't even doing everything everything, I would have some times where I'd be like, Dad, we need to do this and do that. He's like, no, that's too much. But he was trying as best as he could to follow the Lord in his weak and poorly body, and God showed himself faithful. And so I just want to encourage anyone today, be it a stroke that you've suffered, be it any other disease that you're going through, or you know someone going through, look at what God has to say, which I'm going to share about our health, our life. Take something and apply it faithfully and ask the Lord to do his part. He doesn't fail. And I hope that you're going to be encouraged by that today. So let's talk about the gut and the digestive system. So when we look at taking care of the gut, we also need to look at the digestive system. And the reason why is because the gut, it doesn't point, but the gut is part of the digestive system. So on the bottom right, you can see a lighter pink that's got like a darker pink border at the bottom. That's your small intestine and your large intestine. And that's what we refer to, for the most part, as the gut. But your stomach leads into that gut. So the digestive system on a whole is from your mouth all the way to the anus, which you can see on that diagram. And so the gut is a small part of that. Well, it's a big part. It plays a huge role. But it's part of that digestive system. So if we're going to take care of the gut, we have to think of how do we take care of the whole digestive system, because the gut is just the end part of that. And so whenever I talk about gut health, I like to show people this diagram in case you're not familiar with anatomy or physiology of how the body works. If you can see that your gut is the end of what you eat, if you put it like that, then we'd understand that what we eat is so important for good gut health, but also every other organ that leads to there. And another organ that's important is the stomach, because it leads into the gut. And so food passes from your mouth down to your esophagus, through your stomach, then through to the gut, and then it comes out. That would be the normal way things work. So what happens if we have poor gut health? Sorry. For the most part, we know that if we have poor gut health, we might have common symptoms such as constipation, diarrhea, bloating, sometimes even vomiting. But the not so common symptoms can be skin issues. So eczema, acne, rosacea, these can all be related to the gut. Also fatigue, being tired when we shouldn't really be tired, that could also be related to the gut. You've also got depression and anxiety, really, really big one that people don't often associate with the gut. And in modern medicine today, there's this strong research between our gut and our brain. And what they're finding is that our gut and our brain have a bidirectional communication, meaning that whatever affects our gut can affect our brain, but also whatever affects our brain can affect our gut. And so you can think of it like this. Sometimes when you're a bit anxious or nervous about something, does anyone ever lose appetite when they're anxious or nervous? Yeah? Or maybe when we're really sad, you've gone through a breakup, the typical thing is to maybe comfort eat, or do something that involves food. Sometimes for people, when you go through grief, your hunger shuts off completely. You don't want to eat when you're really sad, right? So it just shows that our emotions or what's going on in our mind can directly and strongly affect the gut, but also the other way around. So whatever we put in here can affect our mind, and this is why it's so important. Christ says, "Let this mind be in you, which is in Christ." When we talk about health, it's all to do with the mind. Jesus, I don't want to say he doesn't care if you're sick or not. He does. He wants us to be well. But what's more important is whether we have a mind that is one with him, whether we are his people, whether we're Christ-like in our nature. And our gut health can affect whether we are Christ-like in our nature. And I'll come on to that a bit more. And so it's a bigger issue than just health. It's all to do with our mind and whether it will be in a place to even want to serve God. And then, of course, poor gut health can also filter into heart disease, diabetes, obesity. There's so many studies now that are showing that all health tends to begin in the gut. Okay, so what can we do? We talked about the gut. Hopefully we all know what it is, its importance, how it leads to different conditions. But what can we do to help our gut health? And this is what I'm going to try and run through. So please do take notes. So we'll start with understanding what God's laws are for our digestive health. God has laws for everything. This whole world is built upon laws. We've got the law of gravity, right? And whether we like it or not, what goes up must come down. If any of us decided that we were going to walk off Tower Bridge, what would happen? You drop, you'll fall down, you may die, right? So there's laws that are outside of us. Whether we like them or we don't, they are still there and they are fixed. So the question we have to ask ourselves, especially with health, is what are the laws of health that God has given to us that are fixed? Meaning, whether we like it or we don't, they still stand, and we're going to see the effects of them because they're so solid as the law of gravity. Can't really see from here. 1 Corinthians 9:25. That's the first verse we have on there, and it says, "And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible." So what's the first law that we can see here? There's many more, but we've only got a few here. What's the first one that God says? You can just call out. Temperance in how many things? All things. So God is saying that we need to be temperate in all things. There's nothing, just because something is good doesn't mean it doesn't require temperance, right? We have to be temperate in drinking water, temperate in eating good food, temperate in exercise. He says all things, not just it's really only the good, because God will never tell us to be temperate in sin, right? So it only applies to the good, really, in this case. But 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31, it says, whatever we eat or we drink, so he's dealing with our digestion now, whatever we eat or we drink, do all to. Okay, so he says we should eat and drink to God's glory. So does that mean that there's a way to eat and drink to Satan's glory? What would that be? Have you ever asked yourself the question? What does that look like? There was a study done where they compared young men who were very aggressive and violent in their behavior. And they wanted to see if nutrition had an effect on their levels of violence that they displayed. So they split them up into two groups. And one group was told to continue on their normal diet, however their lifestyle was. And the other group was given a select nutrients and a different type of diet that was more nutritious. And what they found was that the boys in the nutritious group became less violent, less problematic behavior, but the others carried on to have terrible behavior. There's something I always say to my friends, and sometimes they think it's a joke, but I always say, I grew up in Hackney, and in that time there was a lot of gangs and, crime. And when you look at the guy friends that I knew that were participating in things like that, you wouldn't find them eating salads. What would you typically find roadmen or gang men eating? Junk, processed, chicken and chips. Is it coincidence that fuels a certain mindset? God says, eat and drink to my glory. Why? Because there's a way that Satan is working in this world for us to eat and drink in a way that brings out the character of Satan in us. we look at that with children. There are, in the fizzy drinks of children, there's something called aspartame that they use in fizzy drinks. It's been studied. The Department of Health know what it does. What it does is that it increases the hyperactivity of children in the brain. What does that mean? ADHD, you've ever heard of something like that? Their attention is low. If somebody's attention is low and they're hyperactive, of course they're going to disrupt in class. Of course they're going to have bad behavior. There's a way to eat and drink to the glory of God. But there's a way that Satan desires to eat and drink so that we bring about the character of Satan. It's very real. And food is one way that Satan can cause our minds to serve him. And so God says as a law, he says, eat and drink to my glory. That's for us to find out what that is, what that truly means. And I encourage everyone to go on that study and that journey for themselves. What does it mean for me to eat and drink to God's glory? And then we've got Philippians 3 verse 19. When it talks about the people whose end is destruction, it says that their God is their belly and whose glory is in their shame, and they mind earthly things. What do you think it means for our God to be our belly? The belly controls what you do? Whatever pleases the belly, right? Whatever the belly says, I do. The belly says, give me food at 12 p.m. Then it says, give me food at 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. and 1 a.m. and I give it food because it's my God. It rules me. Whatever it says, I do. Whatever I feel for, I have. Right? Pardon? You live to eat, but you don't eat to live. Yeah? I like that. So this is exactly, again, another law. God is saying to us that, especially, whenever God says something negative, you can assume that the flip side is a positive. So he said, those whose end is destruction, which we don't want our end to be, their God is their belly. But really it should be that God is Lord over our lives, including our belly. And so he decides what we eat and what we drink and not what we feel for. And then lastly, the last law is in Ecclesiastes 10:17. It says, blessed art thou, O king, this is one of my favorite verses now, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season for, and not for, wow, again, 2 ways of eating and drinking. What are the 2 ways? Strength and drunkenness. How do we eat for drunkenness? Isn't that weird? Oh, you said overeat? It's weird. And these are the things that I like to search out with God. When he says something, God doesn't make a mistake. He's not saying drunkenness, just by accident. If we would search further into things, we'd understand that he means exactly what he says, being an all-wise God. So God has said there's 2 ways of eating. We can eat for strength or for drunkenness. And so I looked at this and I was like, is it possible that you could eat in a way that causes you to be drunk? The Bible talks about being sober-minded, right? And unfortunately, I realized that there is a way, and it's well known in science. So there's 2 ways of eating. We can either eat in a way that we go through digestion, which is really good, where you eat your food, it gets broken down properly, absorbed into your blood, and everything is fine. You're well nourished by the food that you eat. But the flip side of what can happen when we don't eat for strength, which is on the far right in the red, is that we can eat for drunkenness or fermentation. So we can eat food, and because of either what we eat or the conditions in which we eat the food, which we'll come on to, that food can actually turn into alcohol in the gut. And that alcohol gets absorbed into our blood, and we experience the effects of drunkenness. You ever been sleepy after you eat? Tired? Weak? I remember I used to drink fizzy drinks. And this is one of the reasons why I came off fizzy drinks. I used to say to people, whenever I drink fizzy drinks, it's like I'm drunk. When I was young, I don't know how God showed this to me, but this was in my teenage years, and I would drink just like 2-3 cans, and I'd feel like I'd just be running and playing and like la 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 la, screaming on the bus, standing on the chairs, jumping from chair to chair on the bus, like a lawless person, and all because of sugar. And I remember when it came to drinking alcohol with my friends at that time, I was involved in like clubbing and all of that. I was like, I don't need alcohol. I know myself. I'm crazy enough on just sugary drinks. Honestly, could never understand it until I understand that food can turn into alcohol. And this is what is happening to us, Christians, on a daily basis. We're losing our sober-mindedness, and we don't recognize it. And this can affect the way that we worship God. It can affect how temptations are either strong or they're weak. This is all to do with how we eat, 2 ways of eating. And actually, just to throw in there, you can look this up. There was a woman who, It was a woman, I believe, and there's not many reported cases of this, but she was stopped by police when she was driving, and they told her to do the breathalyzer test. And it turned out that she had been drinking alcohol, but she swore blindly that she did not have a drop. And so they had to go to court. She said she was with her friends. They had to testify. They went through everything, and they found out when they took her to hospital, because she said, no, I have to go to hospital. You need to prove this because you've just given me a ticket. You're telling me I've drunk alcohol. I haven't. And they found that she didn't drink alcohol. Indeed, it was just her food that had turned into this alcoholic-like state in the body. It's so real what's going on, and it's not widely talked about. But if you look up food turning into alcohol, it's all to do with fermentation. And this is what in the book Counsels of Diets and Foods, Ellen White talks about a lot. Foods fermenting instead of digesting. If anything ferments, it turns into alcohol. If it digests, then it won't. And so we're going to talk about how do we get food to digest properly so that we have the best benefit of health, but also a sober mind. And this quote, it says, eating has much to do with the condition of our health. The vitalities of our bodies is derived from the food we eat. Our object in eating should be to live. And like our brother said, not to live to eat. And so, to put it simply, when we look at gut health and you're thinking, how can I help my gut health? Which is, how can I help my overall health? It's the same question. The 3 questions to ask for better gut health are, what should I eat? How should I eat? And when should I eat? Okay, so what should I eat? How should I eat? And when should I eat? And really my aim here, everyone, is to empower everyone to be able to share this with someone else. Sometimes the knowledge that we learn is not for ourselves, as it was in my case. Well, actually it was for myself in some sense, but it was more for someone else. And this can be really life-changing. There's so many people, I'm sure, in your workspaces, everywhere, that are going through terrible gut health. This could be the opening wedge into speaking to them about God, about Christ. And so please do take down the tips and think about how can you share it and make it your own, I guess, in this presentation. So what should I eat? How should I eat? And when should I eat? We're going to talk about all of them. So what should we eat? Any answers? What do you think we should eat? Anyone? Natural, unprocessed foods. Okay. Anyone else? Yep. Okay. Brilliant. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? What should we eat? Yep, take one more. Okay, perfect. So, great answers. What should we eat? I've simplified this. Usually it's a longer presentation in terms of what should we eat. But this I would say, chart, diagram, it talks about what my brother just mentioned, processed foods. On the left, you've got unprocessed, and then towards the red, you get more processed foods or ultra processed. What they're finding today is that processed foods are linked to all diseases. And so the health advice that we're given is to eat less processed foods or no processed food altogether. But the aim is to eat less, right? So that's not saying, okay, you might go out for a meal here and there, but ideally you want to eat less processed foods. What does processed mean? For example, olive oil would be processed, but the olive would be unprocessed. Does that make sense? Because the olive goes through a processing to get the oil. What other example can I give? Sugar. So the sugar cane itself would be unprocessed, and then the sugar, the white sugar that we get from it, would be processed. It's gone through a process to get something. So it's always the processed food that is the most unhealthful. And so instead of processed foods, try and eat the whole food. So instead of the olive oil, adding olive oil or oil to everything, try and have the whole food in there. For example, if you were making a curry with coconut and you wanted to just put coconut oil, consider putting coconut cream or coconut milk that has more of a whole food in it than just the oil itself. When we use select components of foods and break it up from its whole structure, it makes it more difficult for the body to digest. And so whole food is better, and it also contains less calories. As you can see, with the tablespoon of olive oil, you've got 120 calories. But with, 8 olives, you've got only 45 calories, right? The olive oil comes from the olive, but you can eat more olives and get away with that than just having a tablespoon of oil. So less processing, that's what they're saying. But there's another thing they say. And this is where the world is testifying of what God has already shared with us, which my brother shared in Genesis. We know that God didn't create anything to die. In God's plan of life, nothing dies. That means no animal, no human, no anything. If we didn't sin, no animal would need to die for us to eat. That's God's original plan. We're looking forward to a heaven where the lion sits with the lamb, or where the lion and us, we sit together, or the lamb and we sit together. But, I guess, let me not go there. But that's what we're looking forward to, I would hope. And so this is God's plan, remember. His original plan of life before sin is that nothing dies. What he intended for our diet was plant foods. Now the world is saying that plant food, the more plants in our diet, the better. That's not just for gut health, that's for diabetes, strokes, cancer, heart disease, obesity, any disease, you name it. They're like, the more plants, the better. Try and eat more plants. More plants. This is from the top nutritionists, doctors worth their salts. More plants. No one will tell you that more meat is better. It doesn't compute, and it doesn't stand the test of science, right? And so this is everything the world is saying, but God has been saying this for a long time, that the more plants the better. And so we have to ask ourselves, when the aim is to eat more plants. If you're on a meat-based diet, add more plants. But the more meat that we make room for in the diet, the less plants we eat. And the plant foods are where the healing comes from. The leaves are for the healing of the nation, the Bible says. And so we have to ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want? Do we want health, or do we want just something that pleases us for the time being, but at the end thereof is death? Okay, so what should we eat? Just to quickly go through it. Little to no processed foods. Eat more whole foods, as was mentioned. Eat more plants, and anything outside of this sparingly. That's the simple advice, all right? Okay, so plants. Some people may be saying, but plant, is it enough to sustain one's diet? Could you live off plant? 100% you can. In grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts are to be found all the food elements that we need. Every food element is found in those four things. Now, what you have to do in order to get the benefit of eating plant foods is that you need to combine the diet of all of those things. The problems come when we eat too much of any one thing, and that can happen even in a vegan or plant-based diet. Some of us, I can remember for myself, when I became plant-based, fully plant-based, I was eating bread and hummus every day. I didn't know how to cook then, and that was my life. Overdue on one food, too much carbs, too much grains, but where are the nuts? Where are the vegetables? Where are the fruits? And so when you just limit your diet in that way, it can be equally as bad in some cases. But if you know how to eat the variety, which this table shows, and you can take a picture if you're not quite sure what to combine to get the right variety of plant foods, then this just gives you an example. But once you combine all those four things, or you're sufficient in everything that you need. Okay, so how and when should we talked about what we should eat. How and when should we eat? Any ideas? Okay, so don't eat late or after certain hours. Okay, brilliant. Great point. So leave time between meals. Mm-hmm. Okay, take it. If you're not active, you should not eat. I like that. And if you're active, you should eat. Good. I like that. Those who don't work, don't eat. Yeah. Regularity, same time every day. Brilliant. Okay. And not in between. Okay. And not in between the meals, so no snacking. You can eat between, but it has to be healthy. Fruit-based. Okay, so you can eat between meals, but make it healthy. Okay. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. See the numbers going higher and higher. Before it was 30, 32, now it's 38. The more you chew, the better. And eating like a king, let's say for breakfast, prince for lunch, and then a pauper for dinner. Brilliant. Anyone else? There's one more? I'll take one more.
Just following up what he's saying. Breakfast like a king, by the time you're done with it, by the time you go to bed, my understanding is your stomach should be, it should be able to
Brilliant. So don't go to bed on a full stomach. Okay. I don't need to be here. They've pretty much covered it. So well done. These are tips. I'm going to run through them, but take them down, but really good. Where you find most of these tips are in a book called Counsels of Diets and Foods by Ellen G. White. Now, this was written in the 1800s, right? I went to university in 2011 to 2014. Some of the things that she spoke about were not even known then. I was never taught it in university. It's only when I've come out and you see a lot of the doctors and nutritionists that are now like YouTubers that have started to think outside of the box, because we realize that diabetes, cancer, heart disease is a big problem, and we're not able to manage it with the nutrition guidelines that we've always been given. And so people start to search outside of the box, and many of them have come to the same understanding that Ellen White wrote about in the 1800s, and she herself didn't even fully understand what she was writing about. She didn't understand the mechanisms of how it works in the body. She didn't even speak on that. She just said, this is the light that's given me. And I encourage anyone who wants to be in the health field or who wants to learn more about how to assist the body to heal, to read the book and pull out the pointers. They are life-changing, and God knows these things before the world catch up. Don't wait for the doctor to have to tell you not to go to bed on a full stomach. We can learn from God's inspired texts and just run with it and experience the blessing of health even before the world catch on. And so all of the things I'm going to share with you, I've shared the quotes, but I've also shared the explanation of it. So I guess the scientific background behind it as to why it's believed today as well. So the first thing, eat fruit at the beginning of a meal. Oh, I think that one wasn't mentioned, so I'll go over that. So fruits digest faster than other foods. Some of them can just take about 2-3 hours to digest. Probably some might be even less because they have a high water content. So the idea is that you don't eat them blended with other foods. If you're going to have fruit at any part of your meal, eat it first, then the other foods. And that will help with better digestion and avoid fermentation. Again, taste and see. That's what the Bible says. There's nothing that can be taught. Again, I went through university to study nutrition, great theory, until I applied these things with my dad, with my own life, and what I saw, what my family saw, I knew this could only be God's way because we never had answers before. And so I would encourage you, taste and see. You might think, oh, but it's not that bad. Try it. Even if you try it for 2 weeks, just try it. And you write down every day how you feel in your gut. And by the end of 2 weeks, you'll decide if you want to continue or not, right? So try fruits first at the beginning of a meal. Fruits and vegetables separately. Again, they digest differently. And so if you have fruits in one meal, I would say keep them in separate meals. So you might have fruits with breakfast, then you'll have vegetables with lunch. But what you shouldn't do is have like fruits and vegetables all in the same meal. Even if you eat the fruits first, try and keep them separate for better digestion. The next one, be mindful of food combination. So it is true that we can't all eat the same things. Sometimes peas and beans can really affect people more than others. So just because someone says to you, chickpeas are great and awesome for the gut, but you're eating it and you're having bloating, cramping, just stop. Leave it out. There's other beans that you can try. Find one that works. But some are not as easily digestible, and that's just okay. I wouldn't say worry about that. Just try and swap it out for something that's equally beneficial. Reduce variety at each meal. Something that we love to do on Sabbaths, especially. And I understand why, because, you have a little bit of everything because you can't just finish the whole of one food. There's people coming behind you in the queue. But variety is not the best for gut health. Ideally, you want 2 to 3 different kinds of foods. What that means is you can have rice, beans, and salad, let's say. That's 3 kinds of food. But what you shouldn't do is maybe have rice, beans, bread, pasta, and a bit of fruit for dessert. Too many combinations, and that contributes to fermentation in the stomach. Give time between meals. I heard that. 5 to 6 hours, so brilliant point, is that our food does take 5 to 6 hours to digest. So if we eat breakfast at 9 a.m., our lunch should be no earlier than 2 p.m. And then that's 5 hours from that, your dinner. 5 to 6 hours is what's advised. Minimum is 5 hours. So try and leave 5 hours between meals, and no snacking. Someone mentioned that before. No snacking, even if it's a green vegetable or fruit or a nut, the healthiest thing you can think of, no snacking. What that does is that when we eat a food, let's say it takes 5 hours to digest, we've eaten, and it's been 2 hours after we ate that meal. You eat another food, what that does is halt the digestion of the food that's already in there. And when that food is just left sitting in the stomach, which is referred to as stagnating or stagnation, that starts the process of fermentation. And that's what we don't want. And they've tested this actually when they've done x-rays to see what happens when people put in foods every 2 hours. And they found that their food sits in the gut for longer than even the 5 hours then they put it in, because the body just almost stops and is like, oh, we need way more time now to digest that. So no snacking, even of healthy food. Leave the clear 5 hours between meals. Again, taste and see. Keep regular meal times. So our brother said that. Ideally, the perfect world will be that we have our meals. We do everything on a time schedule. God is always on time, amen? He's never like out of balance. He knows what he's doing and at what time. He's never late, he's never early, he's just always on time. And so it's something for us as well. If we can align our lives like that, I think we'll definitely have better outcomes. And this is not just in health, but also in waking up, in going to sleep, which I struggle with personally. It would be ideal. But when it comes to food, again, specifically for gut health, if you ate breakfast at 9 a.m., it would be good to do that every day at 9 a.m. If you eat lunch at 2 p.m., do that every day at 2 p.m. That regularity helps your body at any given time to prepare for the food. Our bodies remember a lot of things. We have this circadian rhythm that likes to be in order. So if we always eat at 9 a.m., at like 8:30 a.m., your body's going to be like, start getting the digestive juices ready because food is coming, right? And that makes your digestion superb. Make breakfast the heaviest or largest meal. So that was one that was there. You always want to start the day on the heaviest meal. Why? Because your body has just fasted overnight. So all your digestive organs are in the best condition to tackle digestion in the morning, first thing. So whatever the biggest meal is, sometimes even the most complex meal, that can be eaten there. So I always say to people, I know we're used to having fruit breakfasts and porridge, but you can eat a savory breakfast. That is perfectly fine. In fact, I would argue that it's even better, because if you go to bed on a fruit meal, that's much more easier to digest. So if you can flip the script, superb. If you can't and you're too used to eating fruit at breakfast, keep it the same, but just maybe make it the heaviest. Eat a lot of the whole foods or the grains that you're going to eat there, and then reduce the amount as the day goes on. Was that a question? Mm-hmm.
Just some, as you say, on the fast, so if you eat heavy, then you go longer during the day than, say,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to eat at 12:21, then you go not eat at 1, but eat later on. Is there a risk of that?
So to understand the question, you're saying if you eat something heavy, can you take longer to eat the next meal? Okay, so heavy doesn't refer to overeating. I don't want to say that, because sometimes you could eat a lot and be stuffed and you're like, I can't eat for the next day. That's not what it is. You should just eat till you're satisfied. But heavy might be the different things, articles of food that you have. So a heavy meal, or a meal that's often more difficult to digest, might be a meal that is rich in protein, like beans. That takes more time for the body to digest. But if you had a fruit-based meal, that takes less time. It's a bit easier on the body. So heavy is not so much the amount only, but how much, different things you have in that food, the proteins really. But yeah, I think regularity is key. So even if you eat at 9, it doesn't mean, eat at 2 because I had a heavy meal and then tomorrow I'll eat at 1. Try and keep it the same, but just eat your biggest meal at that time. Now, it can also mean in terms of amount, you might choose, especially if, let's say, your job isn't as manual, you don't have so much physical labor. You might say, in the evening, because I've eaten breakfast, I've eaten lunch, I'm just going to have fruits for dinner. That would be less and physically lighter. That's fine, and you can do it like that, and that would constitute the less. But it shouldn't be that you're too full to eat after 5 hours. No, the idea is that your stomach empties after 5 hours. Yep. Yeah. So, have we got to times? I think, did we hit times? Okay, I don't know if we hit times or if that was in there. So we don't want to eat late, that was mentioned. Your last meal should be 5 hours minimum before you sleep. So if bedtime's at 10 p.m., the last meal would be at 5 p.m. So if you come back from the gym after that time, then it cancels out the eating, right? So whatever you can work it, where you're leaving 5 hours, that would be ideal. Now, if it's not possible and it's like, oh my gosh, that's too difficult, and you're thinking of a starting point, then I would say after that workout, consider, if it's going to be late, like 7 p.m. and you're going to go to bed at 10, consider fruits, bulking up at fruits at that time and having your big meals at earlier times in the day. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Amazing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think the counsel we have is to eat fruit at the beginning of a meal. There's no time you have to wait. It just needs to be at the beginning. People may go the extra mile. Again, it's something to try. And if it works for you, great. But it's not given in counsel in terms of to have to wait. So just to eat at the beginning of the meal is fine. But fruits are standalone, not with nuts. So you might eat the fruits first, and then the nuts can be with the rest of the meal, but ideally not together. Yeah? Oh, so for example, how I do it, like I'll have a fruit bowl and then have oat porridge with some nuts, flaxseed sprinkled, and just have that. Yeah, and then you can use a sweetener of your choice, date syrup, maple. Yeah, it can be. You can have a slice of bread if you feel that it's not as filling, that as well. But also consider savory ones. If you find, and that's another thing, if you find that your food is not holding you for 5 hours, there's two things to consider. Maybe you're not eating enough, or you're not eating enough of the right foods. So like proteins and fats, they keep you going for longer. So having more nuts in the diet, great. Having more protein, great. You might swap the oatmeal for millet or quinoa porridge instead of that to just get more protein in. But another thing could be hydration, dehydrated. Sometimes that presents as hunger. So after the meal, at least 1 to 2 hours after the meal, start drinking, and hopefully that should carry you through. Yeah?
That sometimes bad habits are difficult to break. So it may not necessarily be that you are hungry and you may have had a substantial breakfast, but it's an old habit.
That's it.
Of
You're used to
snacking
it.
that your brain is saying we
Give
should
me.
eat again. But the truth is that your body is full and it is completely fine. So sometimes it is not necessarily, if you realize that I have eaten a good amount, and you are feeling, it might just be it's a new learning stage for your body going through. So push through that first few times and see, and then maybe reevaluate again. But don't jump and be like, nope, I didn't eat enough, when you know that you had a big bowl of porridge, 2 slices of bread, and a whole bowl of fruit. You know.
It's on point. He's talking about some of us. Yeah. No, Brit, and that's a good point. I think some of the things, water. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have some here actually. Thank you. Some of the things, the hunger pains that we feel, is habits. We're just used to doing that, and so that is a good point to I think one thing that helps with that is fasting 1 day a week. If you can just fast for one whole day, it sets you straight for the rest of the days just to not snack, because it tells you that I can go 5 hours without food. I've just gone a day without food. That's not going to kill me. So you can kind of tell yourself that. Yeah, 1 24-hour fast. And this is generally for everyone. One fasting for 24 hours. People do it differently. You could do a juice fast. Some people do a water fast. I would always advise at least water. I don't advise no water, no food. But let's say water fast just once a week. That's, now we're tapping into how do I call it? Healing. So if you do have any, whatever the condition is, just a fast once a week on water, that's like free medicine, right? You don't have to do anything else, just to say no to food for 24 hours. And if that's hard, start with 6 hours. Then the next week you might say, I'm going to do it for 8. I'm going to do it for 10. Slowly, God is patient and he's working with us bit by bit. Mm-hmm.
How about the intermittent fasting where you just stop eating at 2:30?
Mm-hmm.
Does that have similar effects?
Yeah, so that's exactly, Ellen White wrote about intermittent fasting in Councils of Diet and Food. She just didn't call it that. Again, she didn't have a clue what it was. She's writing inspired by God, and she didn't even understand it. But now today we hear intermittent fasting and everybody's like, oh, this new craze. That's what she recommended with 2 meals a day. If 2 meals a day, you ate 1 meal at 10 a.m., you left 5 hours, like she said, and you ate again at 3 p.m., that means you'd fast from 3 p.m. to 10 a.m. the next day. It's exactly intermittent fasting. And so she was on top of this. She didn't know, but this is why I'm saying that God's inspired text is going to be the best for our health, right? If we just take on board what she's saying. So yeah, intermittent fasting is great. 2 meals a day is the best. But if you have to have 3, then let the third one be the least heaviest. You know, as best as you can. Sometimes we're outside and we're in different situations, but I guess when you're home, do what is right? Sometimes you find yourself in situations that you can't help, but for the most part, let the routine be less. Eating and drinking at the same time. This is a big common thing amongst many people, and it's unfortunate because the liquid that we take down with our foods dilutes our stomach acid. And so we're not digesting as quickly as we should. So those 5 hours that we think we're supposed to take to digest could stretch to longer because we've mixed in liquid. This was a big thing for my dad. My dad always used to say, I can't eat if I don't drink. You're going to choke me. That's what he would say. The food physically gets stuck. So he has to use the water to push it down. This was something we battled with. But by God's grace, we got to a point where I just take away all the water, to be fair. It was against his will, and I'll be like, Dad, you're not going to die. Just wait a minute. Oh, is it? 10 more minutes. Oh, 10 more minutes. And he would go, and he'd be able to go at least an hour without drinking. Before that, he got to a place with his digestion where he used to have very intense reflux. You know when intense reflux is intense, when you start coughing so much, but then you start vomiting, right? So he couldn't even hold food down at times. He would just start vomiting when it's too intense. Doctors, we don't know what that is. We don't have a clue. Oh, vomiting. Okay, take anti-sickness. Stop the vomiting. That's what we can do. But it's like, no, what is causing you to vomit? Every time, drinking and eating. But he started and he got to a place where he was able to eat. We got him to a place where he was able to eat and wait a bit. And that gave his tummy time to settle, and he could digest the food easily. None of the vomiting. That stops. And so drinking and eating, avoid it. Even with children.
How long do you have to wait after eating?
So the advice is 1 hour at least. Some people stretch it to 2, but 1 hour is sufficient. And before eating, 30 minutes. So let's say, because you might have a drink 5 minutes just before eating. We don't want that. Your last drink should be at least 30 minutes before you eat and 1 hour after you eat. There was a hand here. Yeah. Milk cereal. Great question. I do. At one point, I used to eat cereal, and I thought about it like that. Like, it's like you're eating and drinking. And you would find, again, when you switch to different things, you would feel it in yourself that sometimes when you're eating those things, I don't know for anyone else, but you can get a bit of gas coming up, burping, because the liquid and the food is going together. But the best would be porridge, a porridge-like breakfast, or eaten in a way that it's mushed in with the food. Yeah. But, you know, another thing is, if you read in the quote, I think she puts, I don't know if she puts it there, but she does say, if it's ever needed, so it's not that, okay, you're choking and you physically can't, you're struggling to eat, and it's like, no, I can't drink water. You can sip a little bit of water if needed, but that shouldn't be regular practice. If you need to, for whatever reason, it's just not going down or something's gone on, you can take a sip of water, let it be water, not juice. That would be the worst, but let it just be pure water, but only a sip, right? Only a mouthful, but not enough to really be like liquid. I'm taking in liquid and eating, right? A mouthful would do. But yeah, that is these business of cereals and stuff like that. They, when we look at even where they came from this idea of quick food, fast food, and yeah, not made with the interest of the people in mind, really, most of them, even for what's in them. So it would be good to try and do a swap. Oh, I've gone and done it again. Don't know what I've done, but the clicker is gone. Sorry. It's a good time to have a water break. Any other questions while we're here waiting? Yeah. That pure water is fine, but there can be ways to kind of, so there's one method which is where you have Celtic sea salt, and you can either drop it into the water, a pinch, or put it in your tongue and then drink water. They say that helps to take the water into the cells. So that's a really good way to drink water, just a pinch of that Celtic sea salt, put it in the water and drink it, or take it into the tongue and drink. So that's a way. Or lemon water as well. Really, really great to just keep, I guess, the pH of the body balanced. Yeah, so about the gut in particular, the stomach. So yeah, you can do lemon water. You can do different things with water in terms of salt and lemon, but I wouldn't say like fruit-flavored water or anything like that, like an artificially does Volvic strawberry stuff. What was that? Coconut water is good as well to replenish electrolytes, but I guess not in place of water. That can be an addition, but you still want to drink pure water at some point. Even with the lemon water, you don't want to drink that all day. I don't think we eat enough eat enough fruits and vegetables to get 2.5 liters of water daily. Yeah, we definitely don't. So drinking has to be involved. Unless somebody's on a strictly fruit diet, then that could be a consideration. But who's on that? Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a tendency to feel hungry during the night.
Yeah.
No matter how big my dinner or it may be. So I know it's not really meant to eat during the night. Do you have any advice?
What you can do?
Yeah.
I would say drink through it. Have you ever tried to wake up and have probably cold water? So they say that if you have some ice cold water, I don't really always recommend this because it's not great. Okay, fridge water, and well, you're going to be hungry, you've got to choose one. So let's say you try the cold water. That will just constrict your stomach to shut off the hunger. So you can go back to sleep and hopefully you don't need to eat. But and what time are we talking, 12 a.m.?
Like 2 o'clock in the morning.
2 a.m. in the morning. Okay. I guess the question would be, so do you actually wake up because you're hungry? Or do you just wake up generally?
I wake up sometime because of hungry or to make a bottle earlier.
Okay, that's what it is. You're waking up for a reason. As an almost side step, I would say maybe have a milky drink. So you might start with oat milk and just sweeten that. I would maybe with a bit of maple, if you can't just take the milk by itself. Sweeten that a bit, have a drink, and then let that be it. And just start with liquids, flavored liquids that you can get that are more healthier than others, and see if that can just, because all you really want to do is fill the stomach to shut off the hunger. But if you have a warm, hot, milky drink, that tends to do it, and then you just go to sleep. Yeah, so just start there, and then bit by bit, the more you reduce the calories you're taking at that time, your body will start saying, we're not eating. Nothing's happening. Anyone else before I move on? I thought that as well, but I think she mentioned she wakes up for the baby and to do the bottle and stuff, so that's, you're always going to wake up for that. So at least having something would help. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Himalayan salt is better than the table salt. I would just, if anyone does cook with table salt, just switch completely to Himalayan. It's not a great switch. Like it doesn't taste different, but it has more minerals in it and much better for the body. But Celtic sea salt is said to have the most minerals, and so that's why I'd recommend it. I'll do this last question before I move on, and then we'll do questions.
So with the, when you use the Celtic salt, you can use Himalayan if you haven't got it.
Yeah, start there, definitely. And then if you have a chance to buy the Celtic, try that. Right? Yeah. Great questions. Overeating. Somebody said it here earlier, not to overeat. So that's another thing that can cause fermentation in the body. But it's so interesting. Ellen White talks about overeating, and she talks about that's why our breath becomes offensive. This is how she says it. We have catarrhal difficulties. Our stomach is overworked, and the life and energy are called from the brain to work basically the mill, which grinds the material that you've placed in your stomach. And then the next quote, which I found was interesting, that she says, this is your cause of your forgetfulness and loss of memory. You know, Satan is trying to cause us not to forget many things, but most importantly, how God has been good and what he's done for us. And our memory, just even to remember his word in the time that we need it. And so all these things, remember, what we eat can directly affect how our mind functions. So avoid overeating. Eat till you're satisfied. I think that brother was saying earlier when everyone was asking him, are you full? And he was like, you don't need to be full. You just need to be satisfied. So great answer. Avoid animal milk and sugar. So for the plant-based eaters, sometimes it's so easy to believe that coming off meat is the best thing ever and it's fine. But one of the quotes that it says here, it says, sugar, when largely used, is more injurious than meat. Sugar, when largely used, is more injurious than meat. Why? Because it clogs the system and it hinders the work of the living machinery. Sugar is one of the greatest evils in the world of nutrition. It doesn't have, I don't think it has an equal, and it's because there's no single amount of nutrition that comes from it. There's nothing good in it. It strictly is for taste and satisfaction, especially the refined sugar I'm talking about, the white sugar. So mixing them together with milk, they both cause inflammation in the gut, inflammation of the system, and they lower our immune system, which affects our defense against sickness and disease. And so combining them is the worst, but even as a standalone, they're both bad. But in the combination, like you get with ice creams, you might even get that with pizzas, because what they put on these things that we eat outside, they always mix in sugar into foods that you think just have salt. So even in the ready meals, you know, when you buy a pizza ready meal, look at the back of the packaging. You're going to find sugar in there. And then there's also milk. Why is there sugar in pizza? I don't know. Is it pointless? No, sugar cane. Yeah, so the sugar that doesn't have any benefits would be the white sugar, the processed. But the sugar cane has some nutrients in it, because that's the whole food, right? It's the sugar from that cane. So it's got the whole food in it, but then it goes into stages. So from sugar cane, you've got molasses. Molasses still has some of the nutrients. You've still got potassium in there, a bit of magnesium. But then the more you keep refining it, you go to brown sugar, then you go to white sugar. White sugar is nearly stripped of anything beneficial. And so generally in the sugar that we eat, in the products that have milk and sugar, like ice creams, pizzas, they're using the white sugar. They're not using anything nice. One hair and then one. Great. Is it good to use brown sugar is the question. I would say there's more healthier alternatives. So remember I said you've got sugar cane, you've got molasses, you've got brown sugar, and you've got white sugar. There's also other things like dates. So you've got date syrup, which is made from dates. You've also got maple syrup, which is the sap from the maple tree. These all have more nutrients inside than the brown sugar or the white sugar. So something like maple syrup would be a good alternative. Yeah. Molasses, yeah. Organic blackstrap molasses, that would be a better alternative. And that is rich in iron as well, so really, really good. Agave nectar, yep, good alternative. Stevia would be a better alternative than the white sugar, brown sugar. Stevia is just a taste thing for most people. They can't get past the taste, and but if you can take stevia, then yeah. But remember, even of all of these things, we still want to use them sparingly. Just because it's good, it doesn't mean to overdo it. Still sparingly. Last question at the back before we move on, and we'll do more questions. Okay. Yes. Point. Yeah. Very true. Very true. And I think to add to your point, it's still a processed food, right? The original of the sugar journey would be the sugar cane. If you take the cane and you're chewing on it with all the liquid, the water as well, which helps to dilute the sugar, that's the original form. But whenever you get into molasses or brown sugar or white sugar, it is processed. And whenever something is processed, it becomes more concentrated. So like she was saying, even though we're taking in, you might feel like 1 tablespoon, it's more concentrated. It can still spike the blood sugar. So ideally, if one was to use sugar, you might opt for the dates instead of date sugar, because you've got the fiber that's coming in with that to slow the rise in blood glucose or blood sugar. Yeah, so try and make it whole or blend it in with stuff. These fruits, use fruits to sweeten where you can. Porridges and different things, raisins, all of these things, you can try and use them to sweeten a bit. Pardon? Yeah.
I noticed in the last question, but I was asking, why do you use the sugar? And you started to answer it partly because I think you're thinking, I need to But then you talking about we could use dates, we could use banana, we could use raisins. It's a sweetener. It's more natural.
Exactly.
So we're putting out the taste of sugar to everything. Then we could use natural things to sweeten.
That's it. Find a fruit that is sweet and try and use that. Okay, next one. Avoid cooking with grease and spice. Now this is, cultural, strong one. What is the problem with grease and spice? So grease is referring to free fats, so oil, right? When we use these liquid oils, no matter how we use them, people say, should I add it in after the food, before the food? Don't fry it. It still, in any form, will slow digestion. Fats in the diet, liquid fats, slow digestive process and leave food in the stomach longer. And remember, that's not what we want. That leads to stagnation. So the ideal, if you're working towards a more healthier lifestyle, the ideal is not to have free fats in the diet. So, for example, let's say you're making a salad dressing, and instead of using olive oil, you could just put enough olives in there and blend it up so that you're still getting the oily feel of it in there because there's oil in the olive, but you're getting it as a whole food. That's not going to hinder your digestion as much as a tablespoon of oil going in will, right? And so we're thinking of whole foods. That's really the main thing here. But if you're struggling with that, again, use it sparingly, meaning don't pour from the oil when you're making a curry. You just pour from the bottle straight into the pot. That's how we used to do it in my house. But you measure it. You say, you know what, I'm only going to add a tablespoon to this dish and do it like that so that we can measure the amount we're using. And then spice can irritate the digestive lining. This happens a lot and it happens over time. So you might be eating spice and you think you're fine until you start hearing that you've got ulcers or you've got inflammation in the gut. It breaks down the gut wall lining over time. So you want to avoid spices in the food, try and reduce it. And if you must have spice, and you can't eat without pepper, because this was the case of my parents, they're Nigerian background, they cannot eat without pepper, then I would advise using cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper at least has medicinal properties, and it's known to help with the body, I guess, with helping your circulation and not just work against it. But even that, sparingly. And I would say when you're going through health challenges, cayenne would be useful. Point, yeah. Yeah, it's a real reality of life. Again, sparingly. I don't want to say when you go out for a meal, because sometimes, again, you might have no control over that. It's a friend's birthday, you're going out for a meal. But as your own common practice, don't make it a habit to cook with spice that is hot, that you can feel hot. And if you must, cayenne.
Well, there are some people, some nutritionists say that if you use a bit of spice and herbs, then you don't need to flavor your food with a lot of salt.
True.
So you can use spice, but you need to use it in moderation. Yes, because if you use, and you don't use it every day, if you use it like cooking every day, then you will definitely
Yeah,
irritate.
exactly.
But if you use it sparingly, I think it can help you cooking too.
And I think if you're going to use it sparingly, use the cayenne. Because the other spices, just like straight chili and all of them, they've been shown to irritate. But cayenne has been shown to help in circumstances. So there's a medicinal benefit there. Yeah. Avoid baking soda. So this is what we're told. She talks about baking soda and baking powder. It causes inflammation of the stomach. So these things, especially when they're not neutralized. So sometimes in different recipes, there's baking soda, but they add lemon juice to try and balance out the pH. That could be quite helpful. But when you use it and it's definitely not neutralized, it can neutralize the stomach acid. And then having that done excessively can affect digestion, and that can lead to irritation or inflammation of the stomach lining. So avoid that where possible. And so feel free to take a picture of this. I won't go through this in detail, but this is one of the common things that I find that we know the less about, but can have the biggest effect. So sometimes our digestive issues or problems that we have can be because we're not preparing the foods properly. So in the case of whole grains, there are some whole grains, most of them need very long times to cook. I'll give you an example. Oats, the normal oats that we have, they need at least 45 minutes to cook, 30 to 45 minutes. But most of us eat oats raw. We do overnight oats. Have anybody heard about the quick fad? Overnight oats. Great, just pop them in the fridge and that's a raw grain that we're eating. And that's not great for the stomach. We're not birds. We don't eat raw grains. Any grain has to be cooked and for a sufficient amount of time to make it more digestible. And remember, these things might feel good in the interim. It's quicker, it's easier, but at the end, what happens? You've got a poor digestive system, and then you can't even take in any of these things. And it's something I see every day with my work. I work in this field, and our practitioners call in for their clients and be like, she can't eat anything. She can't eat rice. She used to be able to eat them, but she can't eat them anymore. At one point, after long abuse of the digestive system, the body just says, you can't take in anything. Anything is a problem. And then you just have to fast for some time until you resolve it. Mm-hmm. Because it's not cooked. So what you can do is roast the oats. So there's a reaction, it's called the Maillard reaction, and it's where you brown a grain to reduce the cooking time, or which will make it as though it's cooked. It's basically how they make granola from oats. You brown it before you use it. So what you could do is get the oats that you keep in a jar, maybe, toss them into a pan, brown them. So just toss them into a normal pan, no oil or anything. Just keep tossing it so that it doesn't burn, and just let it brown. Or you could put it in the oven for a while, and then store that in the jar. Whenever you're making your shakes, just use that, and then you can just blend it and use it like that. No, it wouldn't be 45 minutes, but because of the chemical reaction, once it goes brown, it makes it you've passed the point of making it digestible. Yeah, that's the chemical reaction for it. It's called the Maillard reaction if you look it up. But whenever something is browned in that way, it's like the principle of making waffles or pancakes. You may not do it for long, but that browning changes the nature of the grain where it's safe to eat and just as digestible as though you cooked it. Yeah, but if you're just cooking it, then you want to give it time. But if you're going to brown it, then that's fine. It may not need to be as long, just as long as it goes brown. Mm-hmm. You can eat, yeah, there's raw foods that can be eaten, not raw grains. I wouldn't recommend raw grains. Corn. Yeah, I would suggest to cook corn. Corn, as in corn on the cob? No. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend corn raw. I think it's as in corn on the cob. Not the hard one. So are there different types? Because the one we have in Nigeria is tough. Just a fresh one.
No, sweet corn. There are two types of corn.
Oh, I don't know.
Sweet corn and the other one they call it maize. Sweet corn is you could rub it in your hand
And eat it. Okay.
if you want.
Yeah.
But the other one you definitely have to
Cook it.
cook it.
Yeah, the one I know is the hard one. I guess I'm going by the toughness. But you said, oh, they dry it. That's why it's hard. Okay. Okay. And just eat it. Okay. Possibly. I've never grown corn in that way, like the fresh one, and you just eat it. But if you say that it's soft and you can feel that, then yeah, I would say that should be okay. But in terms of rice, be it quinoa, well, quinoa is technically a seed. you can get away with that. Amaranth is technically a seed as well, you could get away with that. But rice, oats, barley, millet, I wouldn't say raw. Not on a raw vegan diet. But yeah, generally on a raw vegan diet, I think they eat more vegetables raw, which is most acceptable.
So that we can get through everything, I would like, because I know that you might have just a couple more slides. So let's let her go through a few things. I would like you to just jot down your questions, write them down.
We'll do it at the end.
And then we will have time for questions, specifically at the end, or else we will never get through every slide. Because I think everyone wants to know their entire life right now.
Yeah.
So let's just
And I
get
welcome
through the
it,
rest
by
of the
the way.
slides, and then we can get to that point.
Thank you for that, Brother Stanley. Okay, so preparations, again, take a picture, see how it might benefit you, and which ones you need to cook for a good amount of time. And the same thing with legumes, nuts, and seeds. So some people, we found, especially in nutrition, is that there are people that are allergic to nuts, but when those same nuts are cooked or roasted, they don't have that same allergy. So it could be that the nuts are just not being prepared well. So I would say, again, if you want to be mindful to have good digestion, then roast the nuts. That would be a good advice. Seeds, you can pretty much eat raw, but roast the nuts or soak them to try and get rid of anything that might hinder their digestion. And soaking them is really good to get rid of the lectins in them as well. And same goes for the beans. Before you eat them, you soak them before you cook them for a long amount of time, right? And eat. He was like, huh? Did I not just say? So another tip, fasting. So we talked about fasting 1 day a week, very beneficial to just allow the gut to rest. Even if we've done any type of abuse to the gut, that would be a good thing to recommend. And then generally we're fasting, if we followed a 2 meal a day plan, we're generally intermittent fasting every day anyway, so that's always going to be helpful. But there are some benefits of fasting there. And where the quote is taken from, where she talks about fasting for a day every week. Okay, so we talked about the tips. That was a lot of tips, but this is really the part of restoring your gut. So if you're somebody that has gut health issues and you're like, I want to start this program, I want to restore my gut, what do I do? What can I take? First steps is to do everything that was in those steps. Align your eating habits. Forget about changing your diet for, let's just pause a minute, but just try and align everything that has been said. So 2 meals a day, you might try that. You might leave 5 hours, no snacking, drink enough water, stuff like that. You align yourself with those points, those principles. Once that's done, then you add in some things that will really, really help your gut to also heal if you've suffered a lot of damage in the gut. So there's 5 steps to restoring gut health. The first step is to remove. So that means you remove anything that is causing issues or could be causing issues in the gut. The second step is to replace. So you might put in nutrients that you've been lacking. The third step is to repopulate. That's where you put in good bacteria that might not be in there. The fourth step is to repair. That's when you start using healing herbs, targeted gut health supplements to repair. And then the fifth step is to rebalance. And that's where you change your lifestyle to support good gut health. So what do these things mean? I'll break them down. Oh, this is quite small. So the first step, remove stressors and gut irritants. So there's certain foods that could be troubling your gut. You might find that when you eat beans, it's affecting you. When you eat sugar, when you eat rice. First step, stop eating that food. Just take it out of the diet. We're working on restoring. When we restore gut health completely, you can start to add in certain foods again. But for whatever you know is offending you, be it gluten, wheat, sugar, take it out. First step. Then check any medications that you may be taking. Medications directly affect the gut. So that would be another thing to note. If you do have gut health issues and you're on medications, it could be that. But of course, you'd have to work with your doctor or work with a nutritionist more personally to help get rid of that. And then infections, note that if you've had any infections, be it a cold, a flu, any other infection in your body that will affect your gut health as well. So that could be a reason why it's gone down. That means address the infection. Try and get the infection gone and then work on your gut. Bacterial overgrowth, what that means is that you could have bad bacteria growing in your gut, and so we need to remedy that by removing that. And then stress as well. So stress is a big one. If we're stressed, then our gut is going to be stressed, right? And so we want to try and address stress, try and find rest in the stress. How do we address these things? One thing that would be useful for all of them, I would say, as just one, if I could pick one thing, would be charcoal. Charcoal would be really good. It helps with the effects of the medication. It helps with any bacterial overgrowth. So charcoal would be a good thing to start taking to help remove or reduce the effects of any of those first 5 things. So you might start on that. Remember, you do the other principles, those 8, 12, 13, 14 steps that we just talked about. Then you start saying, okay, I'm going to add in charcoal. Then, second step is to replace. So there's nutrients, specific nutrients that we need for good digestion. If we don't have them, then we may not be able to digest our foods. Those are things like digestive enzymes, or you've got, what else is there? Zinc. So zinc helps us to maintain our stomach acid. So if we don't have enough zinc, we might not have enough stomach acid, meaning we won't be able to digest our food properly and it stays lingering in the stomach. So you might want to consider a zinc supplement. You might want to consider a digestive enzyme. If you take these words down, you can type them in online and you see what would come up. And don't worry about which one. As long as it's a digestive enzyme, it would have a good benefit. But if you need any specifics, then we can talk about that. But digestive enzyme, zinc. But another thing to consider is bitter herbs. Bitter herbs really stimulate gastric juices. They're great for helping with overall gut health. So bitter herbs might be wormwood, cascara sagrada. You've got Swedish bitters. You can buy that as a bitter from Baldwin's or online, Amazon as well. And then lemon water, just having lemon water in the morning, squeeze half a lemon in a cup of water. That can help to, again, balance the pH in the stomach and help with digestion. So this is how you replace nutrient. This is how you support the stomach acid. This is how you support your bile, which is what is produced by your body to help digest your fat. Then you want to repopulate. This is a big, big part. So probiotics, this is an area that I'm working in at the moment. Probiotics are good bacteria that you take in that just helps to support your gut health. Now, generally in the body, you've got a nice balance of good and bad bacteria. But if you've ever taken any medication or you've had an infection, your number of good bacteria goes down. Then there's an imbalance. You've got high bad and low good. That is what puts the gut in trouble. So if you've ever been on antibiotics and you've never taken a probiotic, when you get home and Sabbath ends, order a probiotic online 100% and take it for 6 months. You have to rebuild the gut. When we take antibiotics, they can destroy the gut microbiome or destroy the bacterial balance of the gut for up to a year after taking an antibiotic. And so for a year, you're just living on a poorly gut, but that also means a poor immune system because 70% of your immune system is located in the gut. So if you get frequent colds, flus during the year, gut health. So get a probiotic, definitely. Everybody should get a probiotic. If you've never tried a probiotic, try one. It can be life-changing. I got a message this morning from an elder at church, and he was like, those probiotics you recommended for my young son have been life-changing. His young son was suffering from constipation. I gave him so many different things. He didn't know what to recommend. He tried a probiotic specifically for children, benefits. And so, yeah, I would say probiotic, everyone should get one. Now, there's prebiotics that you can get as well. You can buy probiotics and prebiotics together. But prebiotics are really the food that feed the good bacteria in the gut. So you can find prebiotics in food, such as garlic, onions, Jerusalem artichokes, leeks, oats, banana, apple. But you can also buy it as a supplement, which basically extracts these things from the plant. You can buy them together, but be it as a supplement or a food, get it. But I would say the most important, start with probiotics, and then because your diet naturally always has probiotics, as long as you're eating vegetables, they will have prebiotics. Start with the probiotics. That's the main of the two. Yeah? Okay? Another thing, repair. How else can you repair? So if your gut wall is leaky, I don't know if anyone's heard of leaky gut. So it can be that your gut wall has holes in it because of infection, or it has holes in it because of too much sugar causing inflammation, wrong diet, poor choices of food, disease. That could all cause the gut to be leaky, and that's where we can get so many different issues. Now, if you want to repair the leakiness, if you do have any inflammation in the gut or you're worried about your gut health and you suspect that you have leaky gut, you can type in leaky gut symptoms and have a look. If you suspect that your gut is leaky, and even if it's not, this won't be harmful, you can try a substance called L-glutamine. Again, look it up, type it in, look it up. It helps to repair the lining of the gut. And on every supplement, they will tell you how much you need to take. So follow the guideline on the bottle. And then you've got different collagen boosters. So collagen is obviously helpful to repair the gut wall lining. So that's the vitamin C, that's your zinc, which I've already mentioned before, that will help to boost collagen. And then you've also got slippery elm. That's actually my favorite gut health supplement, one of them. Slippery elm is slippery, as the name suggests, and it helps to soothe the lining of the gut. It's really good for children as well. So if you have babies and children, it's actually even part of the baby food now, or has been for many years. But you can just add slippery elm to something like a shake or something that your child is drinking, or even to like a homemade milk. Done that before with my twin nieces, and it's really good at just soothing the digestive tract. If you have any inflammation in the digestive tract, slippery elm, brilliant. Just take a tablespoon a day. Again, look it up, particularly. Just get the pure slippery elm, not any blend, and that would be good. And then lastly, you've got rebalance, and rebalance means to rebalance your lifestyle. So look into other things that are causing the poor gut health. Look into sleep, diet, exercise. How are all those things in my life? What about my stress? How am I managing stress? Do I need counseling to learn more how to manage stress? Do I need some assistance? Because as I mentioned before, the mind and the gut connection is very strong. So we want to look into that. And that's about it. So those are the tips for restoring gut health. And this is just a summary, which is, I guess, some take-home points for all of us. So first one being that a well-functioning digestive system is key to having good gut health. Let's think about what we eat, how we eat, when we eat for good health. That all contributes to our gut health, but also the nutritional benefits that we get from food. And remember that the laws of health, by following the laws of health, and by using the 5 R's, those steps, we can have good gut health. Does anyone remember what the 5 R's are? Remove, replace, repopulate, repair, and rebalance. Excellent. Thank you all for listening. That's it.
Thank you, Sarah. That was very, very insightful. There's a lot to take home there. I think everyone has a lot. We don't have time, but we have a little bit of time for questions. Just a little bit of time. So think of your deepest question, your burning question, and then Sarah will try and answer just a few of them. Okay, so we'll start with Brother Manley.
100%. Yeah, yeah. That could be it. You could soak them and roast
Can you
them.
say that again? So we didn't hear the question.
Oh, I can repeat in the mic. The
Yeah.
question was that he soaked nuts before and they wasn't very appealing. He was asking if you can soak them and then dry them again. And yeah, you can. So once you soak it for a while, rinse it in fresh water, you can dry it and then eat it like that. Or you could roast it, go on to roast it. But yeah, that's fine. The soaking will get rid of those lectins. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you know, people that goes on the plant diet, what's your take on that? They say that people eat too much carbohydrate. You know, it's the cheapest form
That's it.
of food. So carbohydrate, there is loads of rice, loads of pasta, loads of